Good evening. I declare the Ordinary Council meeting of the 26th of May 2026 held in Council Chambers at Level 2, 388 Hay Street, Subiaco, open at 5:32 p.m. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the City of Subiaco, I acknowledge the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of this land, and I recognise their ongoing connection to this land. Taking attendances now, we've largely got a full complement of elected members here in person, save for Councillor Powell, who will attend electronically with prior approval granted by myself. We've got a full executive leadership team of a CEO and 4 directors accompanying him, and a number of staff also here to assist council, so good evening to you all. And there's no leave of absence requests that I'm aware of. Did anyone have a leave of absence request to submit tonight? Nope. Okay. Disclosure of interest. Councillor Johnston.
I, Nicola Johnston, wish to declare an interest in agenda item C2, the Heritage Grant application to be considered by Council at its meeting today, 26th of May 2026. The type of interest I wish to declare is financial. The nature is direct financial. I own a property in C2.
Thank you. Councillors, any other declarations? Disclosures? No? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you. There were no public questions previously taken on notice, and we won't be having public question or statement time on account of the empty gallery. There were no petitions or approved deputations. So, councillors, I'll ask you to confirm minutes of previous meetings, the minutes being those of the 21st of April 2026, the Ordinary Council meeting of that date. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor De Vries moving, Councillor O'Connor seconding. Thank you. We'll be voting on everything tonight by show of hands, given the mix of in-person and electronic attendance, and I'll put that to the vote now. All those in favour? Okay, the minutes are carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, now announcements by the presiding member. There are 2. Firstly, tomorrow I'm excited to be participating in the National Simultaneous Story Time being hosted at the City of Subiaco's E.H. Parker Library. It happens at 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which I think is about 10 a.m. our time. And I will be reading a story called Luna-Roo, the Kangaroo Baller. The story follows the spirited kangaroo named Luna and her friends as they chase their football dreams in the Animal World Cup across the Australian outback, blending action, teamwork and fun to inspire young readers. And based on past experience, I think most of the young readers in the audience will be from Subiaco Primary School, and they'll be about 5 or 6 years old from pre-primary. So always a fun morning for me, and I haven't actually read through the book, but it's on my desk, and I probably better because it will be a tough audience. There'll be 2.2 million people participating across the country from about 16,000 locations based on last year's numbers. And the second announcement is that it would be remiss of me not to mention that our Director Corporate Services, Emma Wollaston, is joining us at her last council meeting this evening. Taking a step back a couple of years, our CEO, Mr Colin Cameron, was appointed the second half of 2021 and took the right amount of time to carefully consider what his executive leadership team should look like and what skills and experiences they should bring. And as a result, the executive leadership team was the people you now see before you, with Emma appointed early 2023. And I think the time since has been one of significant progress and achievement for the city. And it wouldn't have happened without a workforce capable of providing high quality advice and support to this council. And it has been a good few years. People sometimes talk about the Big Mac Index to talk about a way of tracking economies. I think in Subiaco we should probably adopt the Pub Index, because I was very pleased with last week's post, in fact, which declared that Subi is pumping. Clearly it's been a good few years and we're enjoying some good times. And Emma, you've played a critical role in that. in the city's success, and you've overseen a number of functions which don't often get to have glamorous social media posts, and they don't get to attend awards ceremonies and the like, but you oversee finance, governance and risk, all important functions which I think I've previously referred to as the engine room of the city. So your influence will be missed. I'm sure in time you will miss us too, but all the best for your move to a council far, far from here. That's the end of my announcements. Councillors, we've got 4 agenda items. And a number of those items might be passed by way of an en bloc vote. At the moment, the possible en bloc vote I've got in front of me would consist of C1, C3 and C4. C2 would be removed because of Councillor Johnston's declaration of interest. The remaining items don't have any special voting requirements, therefore they could be carried without debate as recommended by staff in the agenda. But councillors, were there any other items that you wanted to pull from the en bloc? Yep, C3 is pulled. So that leaves items C1 and C4 as our en bloc vote. Councillors, are you happy with that? Okay, do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Johnston, thank you, and Councillor Jones. I will put the en bloc item to the vote now. Sorry, all those in favour. Yep. The en bloc vote is carried unanimously, meaning C1 and C4 are carried as per the relevant agenda items, and that leaves C2 and C3 for debate. So we'll get to C2 now. Councillor Johnston, we'll see you out for probably a short while. Do I have a mover and a seconder for C2, councillors? Councillor O'Connor moving, thank you. Councillor Pine seconding. Councillor O'Connor.
I don't really have much to say. I think this is a wonderful program. It's wonderful that Subiaco has a heritage grant program. I think it's a really important contribution that we make, and it's really gratifying to see that there are a good number of applications this year. We don't always get full applications, so that's really encouraging to see that people want to put their hand up and enhance our built environment. So nothing more to say, thanks.
Thank you. And the seconder, Councillor Pine. Nothing to add? Does anyone else want to debate the item? Otherwise, I'll put it straight to the vote. Doesn't look like it. I'll call the vote on C2 now. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That's carried unanimously on a vote of 8-0. Welcome back, councillor. Okay, C3, the leasing matter for 1 Harborne Street, Subiaco. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Burns moving? No. I saw a wave of the pen. Councillor Jones. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor De Vries. Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. We all know the background to this item, given that this is the second time that it has come to our attention. At the previous meeting, the Council decided to add additional conditions to the lease beyond those which had been mutually agreed to between the tenant and the City Administration, and the tenant subsequently rejected those changes. We have an opportunity to honour the originally agreed terms, which I urge this Council to do now. My position on making changes to the proposed lease has not changed. I strongly advise against it. Regardless of whether we consider these terms to be optimal for the city, this is not the time for the council to be intervening in this matter. We allowed ourselves to be distracted into making what seemed to be some minor fine-tuning, and in doing so have ended up with egg on our faces. I don't think this is a position that this council should be putting itself into. Our role in the governance of the city is explicitly a strategic one, and tinkering with the terms of a lease at this late stage is straying uncomfortably close to operational matters for me. The only question that we should be asking ourselves here is, does the granting of this lease support the strategic direction which has been endorsed by this council? If it does, then we support it. If it doesn't, then we reject it. And we have to bear in mind that the officers are well aware of the council endorsed strategic direction, and they believe that this lease supports it. So, do I think that this lease supports our strategy over the long term? I believe it does, in the sense that it puts to rest the question of what to do with this site for the next 10 years. This allows us to focus on more pressing projects, such as the Civic Centre, and it gives us plenty of time to make plans for this site well before the ending of the lease. The lease also provides 4% of the city's annual revenue, thus keeping down the pressure on rates. I'd much rather lock in this agreement than risk raising the rates by up to 8% to cover the budget shortfall just because we tried to squeeze out a few extra dollars. On top of this, our rejection of the lease would not only leave an immediate hole in the budget and create a huge distraction for the city as it decides to do what to do with the site, it would also signal that we don't trust our staff to implement our strategy, in spite of the fact that we've been kept generally informed of the progress of the negotiations. I feel that our employees are actually some of the most competent and highly motivated people working in the WA local government sector. The front page of last week's Post is testament to that. So the last thing I would want this council to do is to give the impression that staff are not valued. I don't believe that, and I'm confident other elected members are of the same opinion. Consequently, I'm satisfied that while the precise terms might not squeeze every last penny out of the lease, it does support this council's strategy, and I urge elected members to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor De Vries.
At the heart of this decision is the need for Council to act responsibly and prudently in managing a significant community asset on behalf of our residents. This is not simply a discussion about one tenant replacing another or making changes to the current lease. It is fundamentally about sound financial stewardship, long-term strategic planning, and ensuring the city protects the value of a publicly owned asset while retaining future flexibility. The financial implications of not proceeding with this lease are substantial and cannot be ignored. If the city is unable to secure an alternative tenant, the city would face a net negative impact of approximately $360,000 in 2026-27, increasing to around $2.15 million per annum in 2027-28, potentially even higher once annual rent escalations are considered. To place that into context, $2.15 million annually is the equivalent to approximately 7.5% of rates revenue. That is a very significant financial exposure for this council and for our community. By comparison, the current lease generates approximately $898,000 per annum, or around 3% of rates revenue. What is being proposed here is a tenant prepared to pay more than double the current ground lease arrangement, while also agreeing to terms that are highly favourable to the city and have been worked on by our very competent staff over many months. Importantly, National Storage is willing to enter into a ground lease structure where they assume responsibility for structural repairs and end of lease make good obligations. That is a significant transfer of risk away from the city and ultimately away from ratepayers. This proposal therefore substantially reduces future financial liabilities and asset management risks while providing an ongoing revenue stream. It reflects prudent asset management and establishes a long-term relationship with a tenant who will contribute substantially more revenue to the city while also assuming considerable maintenance. This is not only fiscally responsible, it also demonstrates mature governance and reinforces the city's fantastic reputation as a credible and dependable organisation to do business with. In my opinion, we have good standing with the business community and should not risk it. To digress here, I would like to raise a few strategic decision-making points to underpin the key issues in our decision-making process. The issue of taking risks and being willing to toss away a sound partnership if we refuse this item. Prolonged uncertainty and indecision really strengthen an organisation financially or strategically. In this case, a failure to act would expose the city to significant revenue loss. ongoing holding costs, and uncertainty. Good governance requires clarity of intent and confidence in the strategic decision that we as council have set. The council should be seen as a stable and credible organisation, as the city should be seen as a stable and credible organisation that makes clear, well-reasoned decisions based on long-term community interests. Good governance is not about creating unnecessary conflict or prolonging uncertainty. It is about making calm, measured and fiscally responsible decisions that, I have already said, provide stability and confidence for the community and for those who choose to invest in long-term partnerships with the city. Let us be clear. We are not dealing with an adversary, but a trusted business partner entering a long-term commercial relationship with the city. And that relationship should be underpinned by trust, transparency, consistency, and confidence in the city's decision-making processes. Sometimes good governance is not about overcomplicating a matter, but recognising when a practical, stable and financially prudent path is before us, and therefore having the confidence to embrace it. Therefore, I urge you to support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen. As you know, this afternoon we spoke and I offered up my seat at the table. We discussed my offer of my seat at the table at last month's OCM. Further to our current position, I made that offer. I won't quote you verbatim, but you said you'd consider it, for better words, for want of better words. But I suppose my question is, have you considered it?
I wondered if this would come up this week. By we, you're talking about a conversation that you and I had by phone earlier today. I don't know if I undertook to consider it any further, and I'm not sure if I gave it any further thought. I didn't really know the process for resigning from council because it's a question that's never been put to me. I took that it might be a process that has to involve the CEO, but I think where we got to, councillor, was that I said it wouldn't be necessary in this stage, and the world had moved on, and so could council. And we spoke for about 22 minutes, and we probably covered T.S. Eliot and everything else. I don't really know what we covered, but I think that was the end of the matter from my point of view. Sorry, I wasn't expecting that question. Do we have a speaker against the officer recommendation? Councillor Fife.
Mayor McMullen and fellow councillors, I want to begin by acknowledging the urgency of this matter and the sensitivity of the negotiations involved. I fully appreciate that commercial discussions of this nature cannot and should not be conducted in the public realm. I also understand that the tenant believes the deal was effectively on the table prior to our last meeting, and I respect that perspective. But our role as elected members is not simply to acknowledge urgency. Our role is to ensure that we have sufficient, accurate and confident understanding of the negotiation process so that we can vote responsibly, whether that means endorsing or rejecting the officer recommendation. And I need to be honest, I do not feel that I have that level of understanding on this matter today. Over the past months, we have seen a sequence of events that has left me, and I suspect others, with a depth of insight, without the depth of insight required to make a fully informed decision. We have historical rent at $880,000, a market rent valuation of $1.7 million, and a negotiated offer of $2.15 million. These are significant figures, and they raise legitimate questions about historic returns, valuation reliability, negotiation strategy, and the rationale behind contract terms. Last month, Council endorsed amendments, including a periodic rent review, based on the advice or the recommendation of our most experienced commercial real estate colleague, Councillor Burns, that decision was made in good faith with confidence that the amended terms would be acceptable to the tenant. Yet, when those amendments were communicated, they were presented with a tone of regret. And when the tenant pushed back, the officer recommendation reverted to the original deal within 2 days without consultation with the council and without any apparent attempt at further negotiation. That leaves me with a very real concern. I do not have a clear picture of what has transpired in these negotiations, why certain decisions were made, or what alternatives were explored. And without that clarity, I cannot confidently say that this deal, however promising it may appear, is in the best interest of our ratepayers. Let me be clear, I'm not saying this is a bad deal. I'm not criticising the tenant, I'm not criticising staff, I'm not seeking to delay for the sake of delay. What I'm saying is simple. I cannot, in good conscience, vote on a multi-million-dollar commercial agreement without a thorough understanding of the process that led us here. To do so, in my view, would be a dereliction of my duty as an elected member. This may well be an excellent deal. It may be the best possible outcome, but at this moment, I do not know that, and I cannot pretend that I do.
Thank you. Speaker for the officer recommendation. Councillor Pine, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, this is a complex deal that we are actually having to vote on today. This complex deal has gone through a lot of scrutiny by the city and also the councillors. We have had opportunities to ask questions, call relevant city staff over the course of the last few weeks. I do want to acknowledge Councillor Burns for raising an alternative to negotiate even a better deal. It was actually important because it brought it to our attention, with your experience, what we potentially could achieve and actually test that with the actual proponent. As Councillor De Vries mentioned, this deal is important for the city. It currently contributes 1.7% of annual revenue. And with this new lease, it will increase to contribute 4% of annual revenues, which is pretty important. Over the life of the contract, this deal will generate a minimum of close to $25 million to the city. Whilst the rent review on this 10-year contract would have been a good one, the annual rent will still increase the greater of 3% per annum of CPI of Perth, so the rent will increase over time. It is also worth noting, and it's not written in the officer's report, that the annual rent of $2.15 million is a 28% premium over market rent evaluation of $1.7 million, which over 10 years is an equivalent of 8% annual increase over the rent market evaluation of 1.7 million, if you believe the rent valuation is appropriate. But we actually get the benefit upfront by getting the higher rate of 2.15 million per year. In addition, the deal makes provision for the lessee to carry maintenance and repair at the lessee's own costs and return the site clear and vacant at the end of the lease, as per the detailed terms of the lease agreement at the lessee's own costs, as was highlighted by Councillor De Vries. I do support the deal at this point in time, based on the facts that have been given to us. It may be incomplete, and there may be lots of discussion that we can have about what happened and what didn't happen during the negotiation. However, I do want to make a point. The process to get here today has not been ideal. And I hope that council and city staff will reflect on the learnings to improve the effectiveness of the process to get us here. There are many more leases that we will have to negotiate over time, and I think it is an opportunity to learn from what has happened over the last couple of months and look to actually improve the effectiveness as we work together with the city. Again, I want to thank Councillor Burns for testing the original proposal put to us, and I also want to acknowledge that it will be good for National Storage to provide a service to the city of Subiaco and its community. So thank you.
Speaker against? Councillor Burns, thank you.
Don't panic, anybody. The matter doesn't have my support in its format, but that's just blatantly obvious, and I am not going to harbour on about it. I think everybody knows exactly how I feel. Maybe a lot of people in the western suburbs that didn't even know about the place beforehand know how I feel. I do thank Danny's words and Councillor Pine's statements as well. I appreciate it. I find some hope in the fact that perhaps on everybody's part, there has been light, shine on matters, and I'm not going any further than that. I think, again, we all know where I'm coming from. So, in essence, I will vote against it, short of somebody convincing me in the final words. But in voting against it, just put the process aside and what's happened and everything else. It just doesn't sit with me as a deal, okay? And that's all there is to it. So it's nothing more than that. It's not commentary on this at this stage. It's not commentary on process, what's happened, what hasn't happened, or anything else. It's just I've got to look at it and go, can I support it or not? Can I not support it? So that's why I said. And thanks everybody.
Speaker for the officer recommendation. Councillor O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen. This is an important site for the City of Subiaco. Ultimately, it will transition to residential, but that's some time away. So in the interim, the best use of the property is its current use as a storage facility, and I think that's a really important consideration because the buildings on site are purpose-built for that function. It's not a site that can easily be adapted for another use. It's a challenge to negotiate a lease of 10 years. Nobody has a crystal ball. No one can know what CPI or the market will do in that time, but we've engaged professional assistants to work with the city in developing and negotiating the lease. And I feel comfortable progressing it with the conditions that have been negotiated. The terms of the lease are favourable, I believe, and the ones that I think are particularly favourable are the ones that others have mentioned, but it's worth reiterating. The ground lease requires them to maintain the structures, and there's been challenges with that in the past. There's a significant increase in the rent, and there's the responsibility for removing the buildings at the end of the lease, and that is a significant financial impost that otherwise the city would have had to bear. So on balance, as I said, I'm supportive of the recommendation. I don't support delaying it for any further discussions. I've been on council long enough that I've had all the discussions leading up to this point, which unfortunately some of our newer councillors may not have had. I do, however, note Councillor Pine's suggestion that coming out of this, and also coming from Councillor Burns, that it is worthwhile examining how we progress leases in the future going forward so that councillors do have that reassurance, further reassurance if that is needed, and confidence that the deal is a good one.
Thank you, Councillor. Speaker against the officer recommendation. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mayor McMullen. Look, I definitely want to acknowledge Councillor Burns for bringing the amendment and his effort in trying to improve the proposal, the lease terms on this investment property, which helps offset community rates for the community. And the expertise he brings on basically everything to do with property and commercial matters. I have been disappointed with the process. A number of us requested a workshop on this topic several months ago, which wasn't delivered, unfortunately. Yes, there was information provided in information bulletin, which required a response by councillors within a time frame, which all of us clearly overlooked and didn't get to in time. So this comes back to looking at the process. We can't do anything about that now, it's been, but I think we can hopefully definitely take something away to look at that and improve upon that in the future. It has been mentioned to me by a community that we used to have a property investment and asset committee. Maybe that's one way of looking at that again, to have these things go through for an extra layer of scrutiny and examination and recommendation to council, which is how I believe it used to work. Some of the negotiating after the last council meeting, it was clear the intent of that resolution was to carve out slightly better terms, and I do feel like we're a little bit in the dark about how that was done, and why the lessee didn't want to look at a rent review over a 3-year period. Would they have considered another rental review period? That didn't, I'm in the dark about that. Why didn't they agree to a break clause that was quite reasonable, that gave them first right of refusal? So there's a number of those sort of details that I'm in the dark about. But yes, it is, the terms are good, and they do have an impact on alleviating rates. So yeah, I thank staff for their effort in getting that increase in the rent. It is significant. And definitely thank Councillor Burns for his effort in trying to improve it again. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other councillors who haven't spoken? There's a chance to debate. Okay, I'll enter the debate. I will speak for the officer recommendation. Councillors were only here because a slim majority of us supported some aspects of a multi-pronged amendment last month. I was one of them. I thought it relevant at the time that I think I said it was worth testing the waters with the counterparty to the negotiations. Staff have done that. The result is as stated in the agenda. There's no problem with the terms of this deal, and there's no problem with process. I find it really troubling, in fact, that we get to a public meeting and we say we're making decisions in the dark and there's problems with process. So I absolutely look forward to all of the councillor feedback outside of this meeting about how we will improve things. It's funny how everything that's old is new again, because this council made the specific decision to do away with most of our committees on the basis that we had been reduced from a 12 to a 9-member council, and that it was appropriate that all councillors do all of the heavy lifting, and that the committee structure wasn't conducive to good decision making. As for the EMIB, I mean, we've had internal reviews about our communications processes, and I distinctly recall it being agreed by all people who were here shortly after 2021 that the EMIB would be the primary process by which we get formal communication from staff to council, and that there would be a spot at the beginning of the EMIB that says that it's entitled Matters for Action. The EMIB comes out every Thursday, we all know that. And I asked at the ABF last week how many times this leasing matter had been the subject of an EMIB, and the number was 5 or 6 since about 2025. I say all this not because it assists the decision making in any way whatsoever, but simply to put on record that the concerns aired tonight are not shared by me. If they're shared by a majority of councillors, then we will discuss that probably at our regular council forum, which is the time to discuss all matters pertaining to how we can do things better. But I will say on record that I'm very happy with how staff have conducted themselves, and I would be very cautious about saying otherwise in any forum, bearing in mind that the role of council is to support an organisational culture within a local government that promotes respectful and fair treatment of the local government's employees. So thank you, Mr. Guest, and your team for implementing the council resolutions to date. From what I've heard in the debate, even the people who aren't happy with process are happy with the deal for the most part. Not everyone, but the general sense is that this is a fair deal that will certainly help with rates pressure. So I, for one, are happy to support the officer recommendation. I look forward to the income stream, and I also look forward to the discussion that elected members will have and the ideas that will come forward about how we improve leasing processes going forward. But just to be abundantly clear, I'm entirely supportive of the officer recommendation. Thank you. I'll exit the debate now. Councillor Powell, you haven't debated. I haven't seen your hand up. Did you want to debate this matter? Okay, I'll ask the mover to close then. Councillor Jones.
I'm happy to proceed to the vote.
Okay, I'll put it to the vote now. All those in favour? Okay, I see that carried 7-0. Bit lost without the buttons. Anyone against? Thank you, councillors. The motion's carried 7-2. Always throws me when someone's not in their seat as well. Councillors, look, thanks for that debate. There were no elected member motions submitted ahead of the meeting and no business of an urgent nature that's been brought to my attention. No confidential business to decide. Therefore, I declare the City of Subiaco Ordinary Council meeting closed at 6:08 p.m. Thank you for your contributions, councillors, and thank you, staff.